Welcome to the Daily Devo. My name is Jessica, and today we're talking about forgiving and loving each other like Jesus. Our verse today comes from one of my favorite chapters, Colossians 3. It's packed with wisdom for living in harmony with other believers. If you didn't know, Paul, who wrote much of the New Testament, shared many one another commands, instructions for how believers should treat each other. Fun fact, there are 59 of these one another commands in the New Testament. If you're ever struggling with relationships in Christian community, studying these commands can be life-changing. But let's dive in to today's verse from Colossians 3, 13 to 14. Bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other as the Lord has forgiven you. So you also must forgive. And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. Bearing with one another is such a rich phrase. It means more than just putting up with someone. It's about stepping into humble submission, choosing to put others ahead of ourselves, and making their burdens our own. This ties into forgiveness. Paul is reminding us that just as Jesus has forgiven us, we are called to forgive others, even when they don't ask for it. Honestly, sometimes this is easier said than done. When I struggle to forgive, I realize often because I'm not really bearing with that person, it's trickier. Instead of seeing their struggles or burdens, I might be judging them for their shortcomings. I think we've all been there where we feel more annoyed or critical than compassionate. But forgiveness doesn't always have to be a two-way street. There are times when someone may hurt you deeply and not even realize it. In those moments, it's important to keep forgiving again and again and again and again until that bitterness or any ill feelings leave our hearts. Forgiveness is about releasing the burden, not holding on to it until the other person changes. Here's the thing. It's difficult to forgive others when we forget how much we ourselves have been forgiven. When I take time to reflect on everything Jesus has forgiven me for, past, present, future, it becomes a lot harder to hold things against other people. Forgiven people are forgiving people. Now, let's talk about love. Paul says in verse 14 that love is what binds everything together in perfect harmony. Loving like Jesus means remembering how deeply we are loved by him. It's such a profound gift, and we have no reason to keep it to ourselves. His love never runs out, and we are called to share it freely, generously. I want to remind you that sharing Jesus' love doesn't always have to be this huge, complicated thing. Sometimes it's just as simple as meeting a practical need or praying for someone. And sometimes loving someone means setting boundaries. Even Paul and Barnabas, two of the greatest missionaries, had a disagreement and decided they needed to part ways. You don't have to be close with everyone, but you can still reflect the love of Jesus in how you treat them. So, what does all of this have to do with loving each other like Christ? Loving like Jesus means we have to remember how loved we are by Jesus. It is such a deep and extravagant gift. We have no merit in hoarding it to ourselves. We can't be so stingy to not share that love that never runs out. Another way to look at this is if you're walking on the side of the road and you see an elderly woman who's fallen out of her chair and needs the bare minimum of assistance just to help her get back into her chair, would you not stop and help her? Our world is deeply broken, and there are gaps where God's love would radically change cultures, systems, generational values, and more. Jesus' love changes everything. And often, we believe that sharing this love is too awkward, and we fall into the enemy's lie that some people aren't worth his love for us to share with. So to you who have a burden to share the love of Jesus with somebody else, do it. In the next week, just do it. Share that love with somebody else. For you who are more gifted with serving with your hands and meeting practical needs, The next time an opportunity comes up, take that opportunity to serve. But just remember, you're doing this with your gifting to convey, to love other people into his kingdom. And for the wonderful introverts that have mercy and wisdom and intercessory prayer giftings, pray that God would show you one person, even right now, who needs his love. Ask God to give them a dream or surround them with other people who can preach them into his kingdom. This week, I encourage you to ask God to show you someone who needs his love. Whether it's through serving, prayer, sharing a kind word, live out the call to forgive and love as Christ does. Thank you for watching the Daily Devo.